Good morning, and thank you all for being here today, and welcome. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to Atrion's AlwaysOn Technology Symposium 2016. And as Chris mentions, with the AlwaysOn program theme from the Leadership Symposium earlier this year to today being change, we've assembled an exciting agenda that we hope will enlighten and inspire each and every one of you and give you some actionable information and takeaways that you can bring back to your organizations and use in your roles, which is the natural role for us in IT, as change agents within our companies. Now, as I open here, I'd like to share a quote with you from a famous technology personality. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and tend to underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. Today, I'd like to start the day by sharing with you some perspective on where we see things are headed, not in just the next 2 years, but well beyond that. And while some of them may appear to be almost science fiction and rather far-fetched, I'd caution us all to not be lulled into inaction by thinking that these things won't have great potential impact on us all, either directly or indirectly, in the nearer term. Then as the day ensues, we'll also tee up a whole bunch of ideas and thoughts and topics on things that we think we should all be considering and planning for now in order to be well positioned to face all these long-term changes that are coming. I'd like to kick off the day by sharing 3 things with you to set some context that I hope you'll keep in mind as the day unfolds. And so we'll get started here with topic number 1. First thing I'd like to discuss is a concept that should not be completely unfamiliar to you all. This is the notion of digitization. Show of hands. Common topic, everybody's been hearing this term digitization for some time now. Certainly to those of us in the information technology field, it's clear that leveraging digital technologies, we can communicate and interact with one another in new and different ways. In fact, much of what is driving the accelerated adoption of digitization is the fact that megatrends we've been talking about for some time and have been talked about by organizations like Gartner in their Nexus of Forces or IDC in their third platform. These things have become very well integrated into our lives and almost second nature. They're really foundational for us today. Mobile, social, cloud, and data are essentially becoming as invisible to us in our daily lives as the internet that we kind of take for granted today. And these have helped us to transform the globe in the way that we interact with one another. Now, we've transformed the ways that we work together. We can be anywhere at any time and actually still work together. We leverage them to digitally extend our presence such that we can experience things anywhere in the world that would previously only have been possible if we had hopped on a plane. Let me give you an example. At Oral Roberts University, President William Wilson had a vision to make his campus a truly global one, extending the on-campus experience to anyone, anywhere on the planet. Now, one way naturally to do this would have been to build campuses all over the globe, right? But clearly that's not reasonable. But instead, Dr. Wilson handed that vision to his CIO, Mike Matthews. And Mike leveraged 21st century technology to make that vision a reality. As you'll see here, Mike and the ORU team have found a way to bring the campus located in Oklahoma to the student, and the student, no matter where they happen to be in the world, to the campus.
When you think of education, think digital. What if we could deliver education at the speed of light? Education is more than just for the mind. It includes the body and the spirit. Technology is giving us the possibilities of doing whole person education at a distance.
I see an opportunity for ORU to challenge the boundaries about what education really looks like.
Education is no longer confined just to the professor in a classroom.
We couldn't reach our goals without technology.
Let's make everyone an educated citizen in the world.
We're able to extend the reach of the university to what our vision statement says, the uttermost bounds of the earth.
We are now launching what we are calling One Campus, which is a digital platform that will connect anyone, anywhere in the world to our campus here at ORU.
We're putting in a large global learning center to make this one campus a reality where people can join in digitally or in person to say, I want to go into somebody else's world and experience what it looks like.
One of the key hires you will ever have is who your CIO or who the person is that directs your internet technology.
The president doesn't say, Mike, I want more technology. He's saying, I want to reach the world. As a CIO, I have the power with technology to literally impact humanity.
We don't know all that technology is going to do. Education is going to change dramatically. We want to use technology in every way possible in the 21st century to do higher education.
Pretty cool story, isn't it? As I first watched this video, I thought to myself, boy, would I like to go to Oklahoma and go to the campus and actually see this, happening firsthand, see telepresence robots wheeling or walking around the campus. There are actually some videos and pictures of folks graduating, walking the stage. It's actually the telepresence robot with a gown and a cap on it and the face in the screen, actually being able to experience graduation from anywhere in the world. So when my son is a freshman at the University of Rhode Island, he's living on campus, and I said, boy, if they had those telepresence robots anywhere on campus, he probably would never leave the bed in his dorm, right? Just control that from there. But like I said, I would love to experience this, but instead, I actually had the pleasure this past Monday of attending an awards ceremony in Boston with Mike Matthews. It so happens that he was being recognized by an organization called EduVentures for innovation in education. And Carousel Industries, who I'm now fortunate enough to be working with, and we all are at Atreon, had actually helped to build out the campus-wide network, making all of that possible, and he wanted his partner to actually be there with him. So I had this awesome opportunity to go up and visit with him. As we stood in the lobby, he pulled his iPhone out. He said, well, let me show you what we're doing. I didn't need to go to the campus to experience this. With his iPhone, he connected to a robot that happened to be sitting in his office in Oklahoma. We essentially took possession of it, if you will. I actually jokingly used the term robotic possession, but was then quickly reminded that ORU is a Christian university. I might want to rephrase that a little bit, But essentially what happens is they kind of look at this as almost like it's teleportation, or like the transporter from the Starship Enterprise. Via his phone, we walked around his office, wheeled around to behind his desk. We were able to look at the screen on his desk, and all from a very sparse little piece of technology, an iPhone, sitting in the lobby while we were waiting for the award ceremony to start. It got better, though, because then he shared with me ORU's augmented reality system. Are you familiar with augmented reality? Have you seen some of this stuff? So he pulls a credit card-sized laminated card out of his wallet, and it has some just glyphs or images on it. And then he takes his phone, he brings up an application and points the camera at this, and with a few clicks, a few touches, an image, a 3D image of the ear comes up. And as he moves his phone around the card, the image is actually manipulated, zoom in, zoom out, and then this blew my mind. He actually was able to dissect the ear right there, as if he were in a lab. These are the types of things that these technologies are bringing to bear today. A few screen touches later, and we're actually inside of the human ear. Imagine the possibilities with all of this, moving forward. Now, as he manipulated, as he zoomed in and out, and we did the dissection, I said to myself, how might this potentially be used in things like surgery? Will doctors actually be able, with a 3D model, be able to conduct surgery? We know that robotics are being used today to do surgery, but might the augmented reality model actually be one where they could essentially be like inside of the human body doing these types of things? Simply amazing, these new ways in which they're leveraging technologies to extend and enhance and expand our experiences, right? Now, another way, very compelling way in which digitization is transforming the world is really in how it enables us to create things, create new value, basically out of thin air. Now, the idea that information has value is nothing that's foreign to us, right? In fact, for decades, we've been using digital means to communicate and interact with one another. We record history either by translating it or going from digital or paper to analog, or we type in history in word processors, or history is automatically recorded in the process of conducting digital transactions, like in online banking systems or buying something from Amazon. However, what I'm getting at with digitization is that we really want to create or recreate things digitally by identifying, capturing, and storing measurable elements about an entity that in most cases may have never been captured before. Now, when I say entity, an entity can be a person, it can be a place, it can be an object, it can be an occurrence, a process. Really anything can have some type of data or information or digitization happen with it that we could be capturing. Now, in some cases, capturing this information, we can actually create a digital doppelganger. Kind of a weird thing, right? And remember the movie Doppelganger? Anybody out there? No, only a few. But a digital doppelganger or a digital twin of that physical entity as seen here.
Bike is an excellent technology demonstration. It shows the ability of an existing product to become instrumented, to become connected and smart. And then it also shows how we can leverage that information. First in a ThingWorx dashboard, then in a digital twin, and then finally in augmented reality. IoT actually powers the digital twin. The digital twin is a replication of the physical product. Augmented reality is very powerful. Today, as an engineer, when I design a product and I send it out into the market, sort of goes to the dark side of the moon. I don't really know how it's used. Is it performing well? Is it not? Unless something breaks and the customer gets angry, I don't know what happens. A smart and connected product gives me a chance to understand how the product is being used in the real world and to further optimize the product to make sure that it's meeting the requirements and is successful in the environment where it's being used. So the business value of a smart connected product is that it provides a link to the product after manufacturing. It provides visibility for engineering to understand the real world usage of the product so they can better optimize it. And it provides visibility from a service perspective so that they can understand exactly how the product is being used, predict when it needs to be serviced, and understand exactly what's wrong with it when something goes wrong. So the bike really allows us to clearly communicate a couple of technology proof points that can help people understand the broader vision that we have around giving our customers a competitive advantage in the way that they create and connect and operate and service their smart products and their smart systems.
One might ask, why would a digital twin be useful beyond, say, be getting some intel on consumer products after they roll off the manufacturing line and they're out, in the wild, if you will. But you can think of some really big ways in which a digital twin could be useful, such as wind farms, wind turbine farms out in the ocean, or say a deep sea oil rig. You've got a deep sea oil rig drilling for oil thousands of feet down under the ocean into the ocean bed. And what could be happening environmentally there isn't something that we get to physically visit or experience. So how the environment and what is happening there affects that device or the whole platform itself, it's really anybody's guess. It's all theoretical. So they may have routine, say monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually maintenance that they would normally do based upon time. But if we could capture what is really happening in that particular environment, how far down did we get? What type of resistance did we encounter as we were drilling, deeper and deeper? What was the water temperature? What were the currents like? Those types of things. And feed that back to a digital model or a digital twin, we may find by applying that to that digital twin that particular oil rig needs maintenance earlier instead of waiting for something terrible to happen, right? These are the things that we can do by saying that I'm going to not only have the physical manifestation of something, but everything that's happening to it, I'm going to be able to mirror in a digital twin type of environment. Now, connecting these devices together, you heard the term IoT, connecting things together that are not computers, if you will, that we interface with, is commonly being referred to as the Internet of Things. And one of the things that's mind-blowing about that is it's not just that we're connecting cameras or single items like cameras and thermostats, with one another, but as you saw in the video, it really is about having dozens of connected sensors collecting different but relevant information about a particular object, or entity. Now think about the complexity of that, the magnitude of it all, and that was just a bike. Now contrast that with all of the press we're seeing today about autonomous vehicles driving around. How many sensors, how much information is getting processed, how many things are we connecting together on the vehicle itself and then feeding back in, through the internet, of things. Incredible amount of value there. Any piece of data observed with these sensors has potential value in real time or in a trended way, especially when it's, when it's in concept, when we're collecting it then, or we can conceive of what it's going to be like to collect it in the future. So just take today's temperature, for example. So it's a rather chilly start to the day today, right? It was like 32 degrees. I believe it's not even Halloween yet. But when I look at the thermometer and I know what the temperature is right now, that's valuable to me just right now, but it's a fleeting moment. That standalone reading is it only has some type of meaning right there and then, unless I compare it to yesterday's temp or a temp 15 minutes from now, right? Or from earlier in the day. The potential value increases exponentially over time with more samplings, right? Just makes sense. Now take that same element and compare or contrast it to another element about the same thing. So a point in time, and we're not just recording temperature, but let's say it's barometric pressure. What happens when we combine those two together and now start to do some, look at some trending? We begin to see an exponential increase in the value potential by comparing instances of the same element and then doing it with maybe another location. So maybe we want to look at what's happening, in Japan with temperature and barometric pressure. In this way, information can be developed such that it can be transformed into actionable intelligence that we do something with right now, or that we maybe look at doing something with later. Maybe it offers insight that changes a product roadmap, like with the bike. Maybe there's feedback that we get there that changes the way the bike is developed and manufactured. Maybe it provides insight into a process that leads to a business change in process. Maybe it predicts a disaster, so we can prepare for that. Or maybe it cures a disease. See, we don't necessarily even know what the potential value of a piece of information is going to be once we've captured, we don't necessarily know today what potential value there might be in that information we've captured about multiple instances of the same type of element when combined with information from seemingly unrelated information stores that may not even be from our own industry. Entire industries, as we pull all these things together, can be disrupted with information like this. When we pull all these things together and we apply things like machine learning, to those and advanced analytics. It's this potential that's causing so much attention to be focused on this notion of digitization. In fact, in some cases, when an organization digitizes, they discover that there are entirely new streams of revenue that they could tap into. Maybe they change the way they engage with their customers and even with their workforce, a la, say, Uber and Lyft, where the way we interface and find rides is different, and the way that the employees or the drivers themselves find work is considerably different. Or perhaps they get into the information business itself, and they become purveyors of information. Take those companies that are constantly trying to sell you leads, saying, I can find you Cisco business here. Here's a list of leads. Or take organizations like Nike, Under Armour, and Fitbit, and the wearable trend today, where we garner value. They get revenue from selling the wearables themselves, and we personally garner value from the information. But on the back end, they are mining that information and then selling it off to interested parties that find it valuable. Everybody will become purveyors of information, if you will. So why should we, in the room here, why should we care about this? Well, CEOs care. That's probably the biggest reason why. As more and more CEOs are faced with growth challenges and are exposed to the accelerated amount of digital disruption happening in other industries that they may see, or with other companies in the same industry, or even in their personal lives, they're recognizing that digital needs to become a priority part of their strategy. In fact, I had the great pleasure last week of attending Gartner Symposium. Timing was perfect, you might say. One of the sessions I attended was about CEO agendas and how CIOs need to respond to them. And one of the pieces of information provided was based on a cross-industry survey of 400 CEOs. More than 80% of them indicated that in the next 5 years, they would experience a positive impact on profitability due to digitization. And they even went so far as to say that 50% of them, more than half, expect that digitization, digital technology, and innovation would make it so that their industries would be completely transformed, or they would be operating in like a new or unrecognizable industry to what they actually operate in today. Now, if that's not reason to care, CEOs having this on their radar screen, then I don't know what is. But if you don't believe me, let's hear it straight from one of the sources.
The role of a CIO or whoever handles technology at any college campus presently, I don't think could be overstated. Technology is changing education dramatically. We're in a season of disruption, innovation, and dramatic change. All of us in higher education, especially who sit in the president's chair, know that without technology, the future is not possible. So whoever helps us with that is very valuable on any campus. I would say to any president anywhere, one of the key hires you will ever have in your entire journey is who your CIO or who the person is that directs your internet technology to help you move toward the future. The best CIOs for universities now are strategic thinkers. They are not just managers, but are also leaders who are helping leadership chart the future together. Now, CIOs can't do this by themselves, of course, without a vision, without a mission, without substance. The technology is really not worth much. You can have great technology and no substance and never really impact the world. But you can have great substance and no technology and not impact the world as well. So bringing those two worlds together is very key on any college campus today. And the CIO, I believe, has to be an innovator, a strategic thinker, and somewhat stay ahead of the curve. We're all on a very fresh track right now in education. We're paddling quick to keep up with what's happening in the world. The knowledge explosion and the technology explosion that is around all of us is surprising us. I mean, we will be doing classes with virtual reality, augmented reality, hologram imagery, and all kinds of other things in the future. There's going to be artificial intelligence that we're going to have to cope with at the college level and the university level. And we're going to need very strategic thinkers who are well equipped and who are continually preparing themselves and keeping themselves up to date to help us old guys who sit in the seat of the president think strategically in the 21st century.
I think that's wild, to hear an old guy, if you will, typically doesn't have to worry about that stuff, talking about augmented reality and artificial intelligence. That's how much things are changing, where it's all the way up in the executive suite. This is becoming priority for them. So what should we do about that? What steps could we take? I think we need to find ways to manufacture or create more potential value for our organizations. So we should take inventory of what data we already have or we are capturing, right? And that could be data about data as well, or metadata, so that we can understand what we have and then ask ourselves, and then also come to the table and ask our business peers, who might find value in this? What value might be garnered from this? We then have to ask ourselves, what other things might we do to add to or extend the value of this current information that we possess? Are there maybe some new ways we can collect data? Maybe it's automatically within systems, or perhaps even manually through one more step that a person has to take when they're going through a process, because that one step gives you that extra piece of information that makes a myriad of other information much more valuable. If we had sensors in place, physical or digital, such as with the Internet of Things, what could we capture and find value in either by itself or in combination with information we already possess? All of this should be applied to our IT operations, getting more visibility into what's happening within the IT organization, should be applied to our business operations, and then even to our business and our industry, and looking for advantages in ways by which we can transform. There really is a brilliant opportunity here for us to literally create valuable raw material that does not exist, and to do this with an eye on potential value as we consider this. So, show of hands, how many of you know what I mean when I share the term wampum? I know at least one guy in the room does. Wampum is a term used to describe beads that the Native Americans used to trade or as currency. Now, these beads were only useful in exchange for other goods or for money, if the trade partner, often Europeans, found them to be valuable and worth trading for, right? Otherwise, we're not, I'm not interested in giving you anything. So next we have to ask ourselves a question. Once we have this data that we've captured through the process of digitizing things, how do we then monetize it or make it valuable? How do we turn its potential into real value such that it is more than just a bunch of ones and zeros, but instead becomes digital wampum, if you will? The answer is not unlike what the Native Americans did. It's through manufacturing, combine the different beads or bits of information together with others to create patterns of interest or value, and then it's through trade, where we exchange those beads or bits to interested parties, either for their beads or for cash, or they in turn use those already assembled pieces of information to business benefit. Or maybe they combine them with other raw materials that they possess to create new and differentiated value for themselves. Sounds pretty simple when put it in those terms, right? It brings me to my second point today, which is digital economy, a term that's been used for some time now, but really is starting to explode, where we open up trade routes with partners to facilitate this digital exchange of value. And as we all digitize more and more and tap into the potential of our information in combination with that of others, the growth in this global economy is simply going to be staggering. Many of us, as I mentioned earlier, will find ourselves in the information peddling business. We'll also note, and this is really important, that the lines that currently exist between all of our businesses will become more and more transparent as we connect directly to one another to form ecosystems that create greater value through such exchanges. An example I heard recently was one where you potentially see healthcare, which we're all familiar with, and wealth management, very separate systems or ecosystems or industries today, and combining them together and sharing information such that you maybe create something called wealth care. And with wealth care, maybe you're enabling customers to make better decisions with their investments for their long-term future that are in tight alignment with how healthy they are and what the probability prediction for longevity in their lives might be. Just one simple kind of maybe harebrained, idea. What we already see today in digital integration of supply chain partners will become very commonplace between any of our businesses as more and more make information that they're comfortable sharing and selling available to customers and partners via open APIs or exchanges. We may even see things like digital banks created, or digital credit unions, where you can deposit data that you think may be valuable to others. The bank makes it available to others for fees or for exchange, and you earn digital interest. Or maybe you earn access to other information that is valuable to you by virtue of the fact that you are willing to trade that. In any of these cases, the number of connections that will happen will grow exponentially, yet they'll often be fleeting. Short-term, transactional, query-type connections need to be set up in the right manner and then torn down. In order to survive in this world, we're going to have to become much more flexible, agile, and open to accommodate this interaction, all these connections, securely, dynamically, and at an appropriate service level. While it certainly will be important for us to be constantly looking at what information we have or could have, and what potential value might exist to our own organizations and to others, we won't be able to take advantage of this unless we put the right architectures in place now. A great deal of modernization will need to be undertaken if we want to take advantage of this. Another interesting stat that I heard last week, Gartner states that for every dollar spent on innovation and digital transformation that we might explore, $7 is going to need to be spent on core infrastructure and operations. Frankly, the environments most of us have today are not equipped to move as quickly as they're going to need to. Being able to dynamically set up those connections I mentioned so that we can allow for and monetize requests from new customers and partners in that sharing of information will be critical. And if the barrier to entry, the delay to establishing those partnerships and those connections is too slow or too difficult, those partnerships will simply look elsewhere. We're going to need to embrace more agile methods of development. We'll hear a little bit more about this later. and modular software architecture so that we can react to these opportunities when they present themselves without having to completely rewrite and revise applications. And as we uncover more potential to capitalize on digitization, we need to be able to scale our systems rapidly and cost effectively, be they on-prem systems or leveraging cloud technologies. The last point I want to make this morning is probably front of mind for all of you as I sit here and talk about this notion of creating new potential value. And I say that in order to monetize that, we're going to have to be agile and flexible and open and almost promiscuous. It's only natural to think about the dark side of any financial opportunity or situation. In this case, that would be cybercrime. So throughout history, there have always been those who exploit gaps in any system for personal gain, right? And in this day and age, we're seeing this in the headlines every day, aren't we? I would argue that the degree to which cybercrime has become commonplace, that's actually stunted the growth that we could have experienced in this digital transformation or this digital economy had this already all been addressed. Cybercrime is now an industry in and of itself and estimated to be worth about $1 trillion globally. Hacking, regarded by many as a game, is an organized crime. It is being capitalized on. And we even have state-sponsored cybercrime today, or cyber espionage, as we hear about in the presidential campaigns today with the Russians hacking the DNC, right? These cybercrime organizations, it's amazing. They're brazenly public and open. You can download tools to compromise systems openly on the dark web. I don't think that's a new revelation for many of us. and they're so formally structured that they even have formal help desks that people can call into that help to facilitate the crime itself, like giving you the encryption key to decrypt the files that are being held hostage, or giving you help desk support for the use of the tools that are used to commit the crime themselves. The landscape is daunting, so it's no wonder organizations hesitate to dive headfirst into the digital economy. I think this video from Cisco Systems is particularly eye-opening.
How did you decide to become a hacker?
Well, I'm not really sure what it means to become a hacker. That's like some guy in a hoodie who types really fast and stays up all night writing code and cracking passwords. It's not me. I just spy on people and see what makes them click. It's not a bad job.
Mark Hanning, CEO of Qualicart, set to report earnings after their blockbuster IPO.
So you consider this a job?
I put a lot of work into this. I'm not lazy. It takes research to figure out the key players, learn all about them, their families, their friends, what they care about. You have to understand the company's organization. I get a lot of my information from the sales department because they're always so quick and eager. They're hungry. People trust too easily. They don't look at the details. I do. Details matter. That's what I'm good at. It has to look completely believable. It has to look familiar. This is where research is important. It's not some generic piece of spam. It's an email from their boss with their company's signature. It's written in the voice of the boss. It's what he would say if he were writing this.
What about the malware itself? How does that work?
Somebody else out there already wrote all the code that does the actual attack. I'm just using it in the attachment. My skill is in my ability to get a bunch of people to click on that attachment. I always wonder what it's like when the whole thing unfolds on their end, when the panic sets in.
Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, this is Rajiv in finance. Call me as soon as you get this. Something's up with my laptop. I can't.
Are you on your way to the office? Something's going on with our file servers.
It's Karen in HR. Our benefits dashboard seems really slow. We're getting calls from users on it. Give me a call when you get this. Joining conference now.
Apparently, there's a malware attack targeting our main...
It's ransomware. They're holding us hostage. We're locked out of everything. I can't even check my phone. What about the backup?
That will take days.
We need this fixed now. Just pay it. We don't have a choice. We're reporting earnings in 2 hours.
But how do we know that they'll...
pay it. put every single person on getting us back up and running. That's the only priority now.
Okay, it's done.
I have the decrypt key. Mark, we have a big problem. The ransomware was just to distract us. They got inside. They got everything. Customer data, financials, everything.
Qualicart is reeling today from the news that hackers have released the personal information of nearly
The
2
Nasdaq
million
closed
customers.
lower today, led by Qualicart, which was down 14% on news that their recent data breach may be far worse than the company
Its stock
originally
fell
acknowledged.
to a new all-time low on news that CEO Mark Hanning is stepping down after what is turning out to be one of the worst breaches of personal information in recent history.
Do you feel bad about releasing the personal information? All the financials? All the money that was lost?
All I did was get the files. I'm not the one that decided to release them. I'm not the one that shorted the stock. Somebody else had their reasons for that. It's above my pay grade. I was paid to do a job, and I did it well. And that's what's expected of anyone, isn't it? Anyway, markets bounce back.
Doesn't that just blow your mind? I mean, cybercrime today is as much about spying and espionage as it is about the technical sort of hacking things that people do. And people actually consider it to be their jobs. This is how they're getting paid to feed their families. Now, the scary thing is that we've all been breached. As we're sitting here right now, back in our systems, there are breaches that are sitting there. And it takes, on average, they're saying today, and this is actually an improvement over previous years, about 100 days for the breach that happened today for you to actually discover that it's sitting there and that it happened. Now, with as fast as technology moves, imagine what can happen in that 100 days. What gets discovered, what intel can be gathered, and what money and value might be stolen over the course of 100 days. Now, the reality is that there's no single piece of technology or security technology that exists today that can make us completely secure. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to share that with us. We also need to recognize that in order to achieve acceptable levels of risk, we need to have security embedded into everything we do and every element of our business and our infrastructure. User behaviors will always be the biggest potential vulnerability we have, right? So we have to be diligent in continually educating all of them. At the same time, we need to have security at the forefront of our thought process when designing anything and everything in our environment, right down to the software and the physical components themselves. Take the DDoS attack that happened last week. How many were impacted by this? Actually experienced the DDoS attack last week? A few hands out there. So these attacks were launched by a botnet deployed on IoT devices like webcams. Clearly, when those systems were designed and developed, the possibility of being exploited in such a way wasn't something that was front of mind for the developers of those IoT devices, those cameras. We have to look at every piece of technology as not only having the potential of being exploited, but we should also design and deploy it in such a way that it could potentially be leveraged as a tool in securing the environment. Why not make these devices into vulnerability sensors as a secondary function of what it is that they're providing as, say, a surveillance camera? Additionally, to my second point about the digital economy and these ecosystems that are going to be created, the best approach to security today is to tap into a cybersecurity ecosystem as well. A number of threat monitoring organizations are watching what's happening in the world in real time and able to provide that intelligence to our security infrastructure. We see an example here. This actually is happening. This is not a recording. This is happening in real time right now. Those are threats that are occurring. You can see what areas of the world they're coming from and where they're targeting. This is an outstanding way to identify these things happening and have this intel fed into an ecosystem, a framework, or grid that our security infrastructure can actually pull that information from and dynamically make the appropriate adjustments so that the attack that's happening right now on the screen there doesn't actually propagate to us because we adjust. Clearly, there's a tremendous amount of change happening around us, but also an equally compelling opportunity to affect change in our organizations from our positions by exploring these possibilities. The world we live in will continue to evolve at a breakneck pace as digital transformation accelerates. We have to begin to digitize to create that potential value. This only happens if we educate and engage the business and help them understand what those possibilities may be. We then have to modernize our IT environments to become more open, more agile, more flexible, so that we can actively engage ourselves in this digital economy and convert that potential value that we've harnessed through digitization, convert that into digital wampum, or real monetized value. And we have to create an environment that has trust built into it, one that gives the business the confidence it needs to tap into this digital economy, but also one that equally gives potential ecosystem partners the same confidence and comfort that they can connect to us safely. Now, in closing, I'd like to revisit the quote I opened the day up from this famous technology personality. Does anybody know who said this? Anybody out there? Nobody. Cool. It's actually Bill Gates. Bill Gates coined this phrase in his book, The Road Ahead, some time ago. Does anybody know how long ago it was? What year that book was published? 1995, 21 years ago. Think about how much has occurred and changed since that time. This morning I was in my hotel room and I just did a quick Google of technology predictions in 1995. And back then they were just predicting that the internet is going to have things like streaming media, things like online transactions and those types of things. And there were debunkers out there saying, no way that's going to happen. Nobody's actually going to buy things online and not go to the store. As we experience the day today and the plethora of information that you're all about to garnish from the subject matter experts that we pulled together, I would challenge you all to remember that some of these things that we've already shared this morning may seem very far-fetched. And back in 1995, the 10 years out may have seemed like there were some really far-fetched things that were going on there. But realize that they'll probably affect us all much sooner than 10 years. So we should be certain that our eyes are down the road as we navigate the decisions that we have to make today or in the next 2 years, and that we invest in modernization so that we don't find ourselves left behind. Thank you.